Lights, I would assume it would go down. Probably. I'm not sure. Maybe the lower the number. Maybe. Did you bring you didn't bring the instructions with you? Well, it's in the room. We didn't read it. I'm going to be taking pictures on this and see whatever I've got. Because can you put it all on that one page?
So they just ignored him. Have you ever had any little fatty tumors on your dog? Like those? Yeah. We did. And then he got.
My daughter.
2008, 6 to the 27th Artillery Vietnam Reunion. If you've been to previous reunions before, you know that we don't have a complicated program. Really, our program is us. And so what we're going to do is just go ahead and stop right now, and we're going to start serving us good food. And we'll take it up once we finish these. Somewhere at your table. And it's been a tradition of our group since we started holding these reunions 4 years ago, and this is the 6 years ago. This is the 3rd reunion, that we take a few minutes and we honor the memory of the guys that weren't as lucky as all of us. Even with all of the problems we've taken care of since we came back. Some of us came back in not less whole pieces. Some of us have had troubles through our lives and everything else, but one thing that we have to remember is that we made it back. And that in itself was an achievement. But there were lots of guys that didn't make it back, and there were several that served with the 6th and the 27th. And as I said, it's become our tradition to basically honor their memory. So we're going to read their names. There aren't that many. And as we do that, the three of us, Les Higa and Reed McDonald, I'd like you to just take a minute or two and think about them. They were all young guys. A few of them had families. In fact, one of them I just got signed up for the roster on the email, or on the roster on the website. His wife had remarried and so forth, and he knew very little about his father, and he's hoping that somebody from his time frame will be able to find a picture of him or whatever. So if you get a chance, take a look at the roster and send him a message. So, Les, if you want to start.
Captain Thomas Earl Eddy, New Brunsville, Texas, Charlie Battery.
Staff Sergeant Samuel Lee Modisette, Manila, Arkansas, Alpha Battery.
Corporal Charles Michael Roach, Harvey, Illinois, Alpha Battery.
Private Michael Stanley Barrett, Chicago, Illinois, Alpha Battery.
Chief Warrant Officer Raymond Albert Young, Chicago, Illinois, Headquarters Battery.
Sergeant Chris Ronald Martinez, Alameda, California, Bravo Battery.
Sergeant Robert Michael Brubaker, New Orleans, Louisiana, Headquarters Battery.
Specialist Boy Roy Carlos Branson, Fairdale, West Virginia, Alpha Battery.
Specialist 5th Class Arthur Kawachica, Eureka, California, Headquarters Battery.
Private Gabriel Lawrence Two Eagle, Armory, South Dakota, Charlie Battery.
Specialist 5 Mickey Lewis Wilson, Odessa, Texas, Bravo Battery.
PFC Robert Paul Sanchez, Rialto, California, Alpha Battery. Not quite right. Let's have a moment of silence.
hamburger. There are a few friends of the website and of our unit that made it back and that would have liked to have come, I'm sure, that have passed away. There may be more than I'm aware of, and if you happen to know any of them down the line, please let me know, because we certainly like to honor their memory. One good friend of a lot of you that actually served with him, and a fellow that I became friends with because he contributed to the website, was First Lieutenant George Monty Montgomery. He was born in 1947. He died due to complications following open heart surgery in January of 2007. George worked as an architect both in other people's offices and his own private practice. And one of his best work was actually work on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Angel Fire, New Mexico. From what I understand, the guys that have actually seen it said it is one of the best memorials for Vietnam veterans in the country, made by individual states. He was survived by his wife of 31 years, Rose, and his children, Ryan and Colin. George contributed one story to the website, and he had plans to write lots more. And unfortunately, he passed before he could do that. And I recommend that if you haven't read his story, it's called Flying Too Low. And it was about his job as an aerial observer, actually flying for Bravo battery at the time, because aerial observers, if you remember, flew for the whole battalion. Another friend of the site is was a good friend of Joe Cragmire, who sits at my side here, and we're honored to have his wife, Mary Beth Ferris, with us tonight, who actually lives in Springfield. And I met Pete through the site. It was probably maybe about a year after I had put the site up, and I started getting these emails from this guy who lived in Missouri, and he was griping to me because there was nothing on the site from the 67, 68 years, 66, 67 years. And I mean, he had a legitimate complaint, but I wrote back to him and said, "Geez, Pete, come on, I don't have a library of this stuff. I get it from you guys. So, if you want something on the site, you need to start sending it to me." One thing led to another, and Pete ended up sending some photos, and Joe added to it, and so forth. And really, Pete had a really on-time of death, which Mary Beth just told me was talking to her, that ended up being basically got lung cancer, and it was due to Agent Orange exposure. So, another guy that served while I was there that I remember was a guy by the name of Willie Sutton Jr. And Willie was a good old Southern boy I think he was from North Carolina. And everybody did their own jobs when they were over there, and everybody fulfilled the purpose. And Willie ended up becoming the water tank driver. And if you ever needed a shower wherever you were at, especially in Conroy, you really wanted to see him show up here. He did the job during the whole time that he was there, and I think there was only twice that we ran out of water. Now, I know some of you guys served at different times, and a shower was a real luxury. But if you end up getting used to having a shower and you don't get one in that dirty red dirt at Conroy, no one can really tell you, unless you were there, how great it was to get some of that stuff off. You never really got rid of it until, I still think I see a little bit of it every time I take a shower. Another fellow that was good friends of Jim Hines, and that was there during my time, was a fellow by the name of Floyd Olive. And it's kind of a moving little story, is that Jim was one of the original people that I talked with when I went to put the site up. He had posted stuff all over the internet looking for his buddies. And when I started looking to put the site up, I started searching to see was there anybody else out there. And I came across one of Jim's postings. And Jim and Reed McDonald had actually been in contact. And that's how the three of us got together, and that was basically the beginning of the site, where we pooled our photographs together and so forth. And Jim had a copy of the headquarters Alpha Battery yearbook. Well, actually, it's the whole battalion yearbook. And he was good enough to share that with me. But anyway, Jim searched for a long time to find his good friend Floyd Oliver. And Jim, you were able to find him before he passed, Jim. So we want to remember that. The 6th and the 27th, if you don't know, also had some time with Iraq, in Iraq. They were not the same kind of unit that we were. They were actually a rocket unit. And they did get sent to Iraq in 2003. And one of the guys that were killed with the unit was Specialist Jose Amacinio Perez III. He died in May of 2003. So I hope you'll join me in toasting the memory of all of those guys also.
John, if you let me, I'd like to add a name of Staff Sergeant Archie Kumar Jones. He's the guy that pulled me out of the mud and saved my life. He passed away about 3 years ago before I was able to thank him. So I want you to remember his name.
There's 2 yards. If you're a regular visitor to the site, you probably already know about what I'm going to tell you about now, but I think one of our members needs some special recognition, because not only has he brought a lot of honor upon himself, he actually brought some real great honor upon the 6th and the 27th Artillery. And I'm talking about no other than Norm Wolfinger. In 2007, very honest. And I think he knew a different Norm in Vietnam than he was when he came back to the United States. And that's all the better for you, Norm. But I think all these guys love a little bit more the guy that was in Vietnam. And we've seen that guy come out a little bit at every one of these reunions. Norm was actually not connected, unbeknownst to me, a little bit with Norm, because when I came to Vietnam and landed in Quan Loy in May of 1969, got to the orderly room, I was with 2 other guys, and I may have told you this story, and I'm sorry if I'm boring you with it again. But I think it's a good story that just how happenstance can put you in different places. I was a 13 Alpha, and I was at SP training, and I was destined to be on those guns. And I just hated the thought of it. You know, I would have done anything to get off those guns. But when I got there, Norm and Wayne Thompson and the battery clerk, I don't know if his name slips in now, they were all out on a guard duty a couple nights before that, and they got hit by a rocket when Norm was injured. And the first sergeant asked me, asked the 3 of us, can any of you guys type? Now you remember the adage when you were in the service, you don't volunteer for anything. And I said, no, I'm going to volunteer for this. And I ended up staying in the orderly room and stayed off those guns the whole time. Unbeknownst to me, I ended up pulling guard duty every second night or whatever, but I could live with that. So I have a lot of respect for you guys that were actually on the guns, that hauled the ammo, that did the shooting and everything else. But Norm basically came back. He was injured pretty severely, picked up his life, married a fine wife, Janie, and if you know him, he was made to be in politics, became state's attorney, has done some great things for his county in Florida. So I think Norm deserves a good hand for So that's really basically the program. We keep it simple. And now what we want to do is do some self-introductions. And what we'll do after we've been all the way around the room and you've introduced yourself so everybody knows who you are. Tell us if we'll start with the vets. If you want to introduce your wife, or if she wants to introduce herself, that's also, but don't forget her. You brought her along. And then what we'll do after we're all done with that, we're going to just open the floor, and anybody that wants to tell a story or a memory or whatever will be able to do that. And I think we're going to start with Jim Hines. You want to start the introduction? I'll drive the table as we go around.
I'm Jim Hines. I was in Conway from January 5th of 1969 to December. Around the 15th I left. And this is my wife, Liz Hines.
I'm Ken Perrins. I was at Alpha Battery from October 68 till December 69. This is my wife, Mary.
I'm Jeffrey Fenwick, and I was in Alpha Battery on big long ones and the little short units. From October of 68 to October 69, and this is my wife, Donna. This is our 40th wedding anniversary.
I'm Lester Higa. I was in Alpha Battery, served from, let's see it, April 70. April 70 to June 71. Thank you.
I'm Ken Catizzo. I served in Alpha Battery. I was a fire direction officer and then executive officer from July of 70 to June 71. We live in St. Louis. I retired in January. I was a banker for about 35 years, married 3 kids. I can't tell you, but I got 35 years.
I'm Larry Hutchison. I was in Charlie Battery and Headquarters Battery from 68 to May 12, 69. This is my wife, Sue.
I'm Tom Hines. I was with Alpha and Headquarters Battery from September 70 to July 71. This is my wife, Chris.
Roger Mallory. I was with Headquarters Battery from January 69 to September of 70. And welcome home, everyone.
My name is Roy Maldonado, and I was in Alpha Battery from January 68 to February 69. And I met Willie. Yeah, because I made that water run about twice. Yeah, it was a nervous trip. And he made it all up, huh?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
Don't forget your wife.
Yeah, my wife.
Served from September 67 to September 68. And service battery is my wife, Mary.
Ken Wright, Charlie Battery, Chief of Section 8-inch from March of 70 till April 70 to March 71.
I'd like to take just a minute to give Ken special thanks for coming to our reunion on the 6th and the 27th, because there's also a reunion for this Charlie Battery that he could have gone to, and he chose to join us, and he's taking a little flack from it. So, Ken. I'm John Wagra, Alpha Battery. I served from May of 69 till June of 1970, and this is my wife, Mary.
Scott Kruger, May of 70 through July of 71, Alpha Battery, FDC. It's my current wife, Nancy. We've been current for about 38 years.
Joe Craig Miles, served January 1st, 67 to December 23rd, 67 in A Battery. This is Mary Beth.
My name is Ralph Porter. I served from December 69 to June 1971 in Headquarters Battery, Alpha Battery, and Robert Battery.
Jerry Graham, Alpha Battery FDC, and I was there from January of 69 to January of 70. This is my wife, Martha.
White, Headquarters Battery, from January of 69 to December of 69.
Jan McCloud of March of 69 through May of 70. Alpha Battery. My wife, Lynn.
I'm Larry Cordham. I served from March of 1967 to May of 1968, and I was a wrecker operator in service battery.
And
My pride of almost 40 years.
My name is Aldo Roberto. I served in Service Battery 627 from August 67 to August 68. And this is my one and only wife for 40 years, Rose.
My name is Dennis Sparrow, and I came in country at 67. I came into Cameron Bay. I was there for a while, and then I was sent to Service Battery 627. And I came in March, and I was home end of February.
And
this is my lovely wife, Lori. We've been married for 38 years.
My name is Reed McDonald. This is my wife Mary, 42 years. We were married when I served in Vietnam. I was A Battery FPC September 69 through May of 70.
I'm George Owens, Columbia, North Carolina. I'm proud of it. I served in Vietnam between March 68 and July 69, headquarters battery clerk. This is my wife,
Johnny Webb, Chief of Section, K Battery, March of 69 to March of 70.
Charles Nelson, I served at A and B Battery from February 69 to April 70.
We don't have any brain surgeons in this group, but we have two guys that almost make as much money as they do. Larry Hutchinson and George Owens are both plumbers. You all know that, don't you? Let's open the floor, Norm. Oh, I'm sorry.
Normal figure, 40 years ago, I arrived in Vietnam with a lot of you here. And so I started at C Battery in 68, September, and went to headquarters battery and stayed there pretty long. And then went to A Battery for a short time. And this is my wife, Jamie.
68 to August 69, I was a radio operator in the TLC, and this is my wife, Cindy.
I'm Jim Corup. I served in the headquarters battery. I lasted 40 years to the day tonight in Vietnam.
Wow. And it's his birthday today.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jim. Happy birthday to you.
September 19th, 1968 until December 3rd, 1969.
And
your wife. And my wife, JC.
What I'm thinking about what this is going to be like in about maybe the third reunion from now, when you can't remember who you are. Anybody?
Speak up.
Okay.
Never hear with artillery guys.
Speak up! Rudolph was a friend of mine from New Orleans, and on June 6th, p.m. to 6 a.m., before the end, because I'd go get sodas for the guys. And that night I went over there to get them, and coming out, he was sitting at the table with his legs crossed, and we just got his orders for hard. From every June the 7th at dark, I go outside and drink a Budweiser for him and talk to him because he was drinking a Budweiser that night.
Don't be bashful.
To tell you how great I am and the plumbers of the world, this guy down here, Larry and I, arrived at C Battery together, and we were two stupid guys who decided when they said we need clerks up in Convoy, and all the hooch maids would say, no, Buku DC, no go, no go. And Larry and I hated the guns. You're right. I mean, we were on them for a month or so. We hated it all night long. So Larry and I volunteered to go up to headquarters battery. So we served together. And I'll tell you, the nicest bunch of guys. If you had to go to war, you couldn't ask for better friends than we had. So you know, it's just a wonderful thing. And I'll tell you, I owe a lot to a lot of people in this room and people not in this room, and we'll always appreciate it. Oh, and Wiedeberg, Alan Wiedeberg, who was with us at the first 2 reunions. I talked to him tonight. He's had some health issues, but he's okay. He's getting up and around, just got to get his strength back. He lives in Portland, Oregon. If anybody wants to email him out there too somehow, or give him a call. But another great guy. He was also one of the clerks at headquarters.
Really wanted to come, and then just couldn't make it. If you remember Wesley and Jeffries and his wife, he was one of the guys from 1966 or 66 that came over on the troop ship. And he said he really would have liked to come, but he had surgery on both of his knees. Charles Smitty Smith, if you remember him from Tennessee, he also, there must be something about artillery guys, their knees go out. But he had knee surgery also, and unfortunately his wife has been battling cancer. He sent his best. B.J. Bowles contacted me and said he would have liked to have come also. There was just several guys that, for various reasons this time, that had been to previous reunions would have really liked to have come, and they told me to just extend their best wishes to everybody. So, who else would like to start?
Well, I know you all had your meal. I was going to tell this first, but I think it's probably better to tell it now.
Remember to speak up. It's a big group.
I remember one incident over there where y'all know the mountain yards. I was so-called in charge of watching these mountain yards fill sandbags. Louder.
Louder. Louder.
Can't hear?
No.
We can't hear you guys.
Louder.
Were you guys in the artillery?
Loud.
I can't hear us.
Speak loud.
Can't hear? Go as loud as you can.
Well, he'd be
Come over here and speak. That way, and speak loud.
Anyhow, I was supposed to watch these mountain yards. Y'all remember what mountain yards were? And
well, why don't you tell us for the benefit of maybe?
well, there were tribes people that came down and couldn't work, and they were all covered with cloth. They had turbans around their head, and had all this cloth on. Had all these aluminum bracelets up their arms, around their necks. And I was put out there to watch them fill these sandbags. And so they had this nice little pile of sandbags out there. I'm sitting over there in the shade, and all of a sudden these mountain yards surround this pile of sandbags. And they start beating on it with sticks. And out came a rat. And they flattened the rat. They killed it. And they flattened it out. And this one mountain yard, he takes the skin out of his belt or out underneath there, and he rolls this rat up inside of this stinky, oily skin. Well, a little later I told them to take a break. Well, they started out taking the rat out and handed me the rat. They wanted me to take a bite. So I faked it. I did the best I could. And this guy had this big grin on his face, and he takes off one of his aluminum bracelets, and he handed me the aluminum bracelet. I still have it. I was one of them.
It's been one of the best things I've ever done in my life. It has paid off in more rewards, not financial, at least that I'm going to tell you about. I've just had so much fun from it that there were many days I just waited to open the emails to see who had found the site and so forth. And I think I've told some of you some of the stories and stuff. But I'll never forget the email I got from Scott from Vietnam. One night about midnight or whatever, opened this email, and he says, "Geez, John, I found your website, and I can't, I'm in Vietnam," and he says, "I've got nothing to do, and every once in a while I check to see if there's anything on Quan Loy," and he said, "Your website came up," and he said, after a few minutes, he said, "My picture was on it." He said, "I couldn't believe it."
And I did not recognize myself at first because I was thin. It's a great website, and it's what really brought us all together. It's just the best.
I had another guy, Larry Jameson, who's written some stories, and I wish that he'd come to one of the reunions. He's a good writer, in addition to a good guy. And I actually got a couple of stories that I'll bore you with. I've told one of these before, but I got this, first time I heard from Larry, I got this email from him, and the headline on it was, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." And I I paused for a minute, and he said, when I was in Vietnam, I took some pictures, and he said, I lost all my pictures. I got injured, and he said, I've got 2 college-age boys, and they've been interested in my service time and so forth. And he said, I'd never had any pictures to show them until your website came up. And he said, I found your website about 2 weeks ago, and he said, we've literally spent days looking at stuff on it. And he said, it's the best time I've ever had. My boys understand what my service was and so forth. And so we started exchanging emails and so forth. It was always great to get an email like that, really perked me up. And when I first got into the orderly room at Conroy, I basically subbed for people, and when they finally started coming back, Norm never came back, but a couple of them others did, and they really didn't have a slot for me there. But the first sergeant knew that these guys were going to be leaving, and he didn't want to get stuck with nobody that could type again. So he basically kind of created some jobs for me while I was there, and one of the makeshift jobs was trying to clean filing cabinets. And I came across a box of 35mm slides when I was there. And so I started just kind of holding them up to the light to see what they were and stuff, and it were slides of one of the tubes that had exploded. And so I was a history major, and I planned on coming back to the States and teaching, and I thought, this will be just kind of a little bit of actual raw history to actually show the students, And so I asked the first sergeant and the clerks that were there, Wayne Thompson and so forth, does anybody know who they belong to? And they said, nah, they belong to somebody that got hurt and got shipped out, and we don't know where they went. They got shipped to Japan, and we don't have any way of getting their stuff to them. And so go ahead and take them if you want. So when I went home, I took them and packed them in my bags and stuck them away in my Vietnam stuff. And when I started looking at content for the website, I pulled them out, and I thought, I don't really have any history of these. These aren't my slides, so I can't really just throw them up on there. I don't know what happened to this gun or anything else. And so I just I had a transparency reader, and so I converted them, so I could digitize them, and so I could see them on the internet and so forth. But I just hung back, hoping that someday somebody would be able to tell me about it. So Larry Jameson and I started exchanging emails, and he started saying, I've only got a few pictures left. And of course I had scanned these, so I looked at every single one of the pictures and so forth. And there were some pictures of some guys, one in particular. So he said, I only have one picture of myself. He said it was taken at the hospital in Japan when I was recovering. So I said, send it. I want to see it because you're going to write some stories, and I'd like to do a then and now photo. So he sent it. When I got the photo, I was looking at it on the screen. I thought, I've seen this guy someplace. I've seen this. He just looks familiar. And after about 2 or 3 days of trying to noodle it, you got that lightning bolt. I know where that guy was. He's in these slide photos. And so I wrote back to him, and I thought to myself, this can't be. But maybe it's one of these serendipity things, that you hear about. So I wrote back to him and started questioning him. I said, did you have a camera when you were there? He said, yeah. I bought one, he said, a 35mm about 2 weeks before I got hurt. And he said, I took a bunch of pictures of these tubes that had exploded on one of the guns. And I said, did you happen to have somebody take a picture of you? And he said, yeah. And I said, I can't believe it. I think I got your slides. And so I sent him one, and he wrote back and said, John, you got my slides. It's almost with a story worth sending to the newspapers. Both of us talked about doing it, but we just never did it. So anyway, that's a little bit of my goal. Anybody else?
All the time since I got back from Vietnam, I've always thought that support that we furnished during the war really never got appreciated, because all the press went to the Marines and all of this other stuff, and they never really considered that if it wouldn't have been for the Air Force, for the heavy artillery, and for all of the other support stuff that was around, that the bodies of those Marine guys and airborne guys would have been stacked up like we stacked up the VC bodies. And so when I got there, in service battery, the stresses of what it took to do the job was a lot different than the firing batteries, because we were under a kind of a performance thing where we had to furnish equipment and parts and stuff like that. And when I got there, everybody was rotating out, and so I was the only guy there. And so then Aldo came into the battery, and that was great because he could operate directly and he could weld. And then Jim came in, Tons of Fun was his name, but he came in and he was good at operating truck, and when we had to do something, it could be above the Army lines or it could be below the Army lines. If we could get it, if we could go down and just order projectors and powder, we'd go get it. If we needed something else, honestly, it was part of our system that we had to steal to furnish it. But if they needed it, the guns had to be fed and the people had to be taken care of. And so then Danny came, and Danny was a really good addition to our thief group. He didn't steal the big stuff, but he stole a lot of it. And so not only that took place, but inside the battery, you needed support from people around, because once you were in a war zone, everybody knows that the only way to get out is you either get shot, or you get wounded, or your time's up. And so inside the battery and inside our little groups, we all had to entertain each other. And in the very serious business of war, us 4 guys were in the service battery together all at the same time, and we entertained each other, and we kept each other sane. And I would like to thank you 3 guys for helping me through that year, because if I had guys that couldn't get along or couldn't function as well as you did, I don't think I would have made it. So thanks, guys.
I'm kind of the new guy. It's only been about 2.5 years since I found John's website, and once I found it, I couldn't stop reading it. All the stories that all of y'all have written, I've read them again, I've read them again, and a couple of you, 2, 3 of you, I've gotten off to the side and told you how well you've written stories, and how entertaining they were to me, and when this reunion was coming, I kind of decided I needed to be here, even though I'm from Charlie Battery, but that doesn't matter. So what I want to do, I just want to thank all you, John especially for starting the website, but all you for all the stories you've snowballed going downhill, and we just need to keep it up.
Over is first. A forward observer is, we had a little tree house. We used to climb about, 30, 40 steps up there, and we would watch, and if there was something to be called in, they'd call us, we'd call in the rounds. Well, I had no idea what I was doing, and every time up there, I was with Corporal Fenwick over here. And the first time I'm with somebody else, they need someone to call in the rounds. Well, until last night, I had no idea that it was Nelson over there that saved my neck. Because if I would have called him in, there probably would have been maybe 6 to a dozen less people here today than infantry. And Nelson over there took over, and he'd have to tell you exactly, but I know we did it like 1 pin at a time, so we didn't blow anybody out. Until they said, close enough, you did your job, stop. But I just wanted to share that with you. That's my buddy Nelson over there.
I don't remember the water they room that either. Yeah, there was one. And the mountain yard, where it ain't hurt in all these years. People with black teeth. And Charlie Battery was always messing up. It's a daily kind of thing.
I must have done before I got there.
You straighten them out. That was a problem that we did not get along. That's what I remember. There was a lot of cussing and a lot of smoking. But thanks to old legs and loss of mobility, we get along much better.
Story about how to start off the wrong foot. When I got there, I was assigned to the Fire Direction Center after going through a week's training how to run different procedures. So one of the jobs I was given was at nighttime with Reed, where I worked at DC at night. So I had all day available. They told me that the staff sergeant showed up one day,
And it's like my second day there. And he said, "Sir, I'm supposed to give you tell you how to shoot the 81mm mortar, which is stationed out right behind the FEC to provide illumination in case we get attacked." So I followed him on out. And he showed me how to work the mortar, which is no big deal. So you throw it down the tube, it pops out. The time is wrong, you change the fuse cord. So that was all the training I had. So I said, "Well, that's nice. We have all these illumination rounds there. Where's the HE rounds, high explosive rounds?" He says, "Well, they didn't give me any." I says, "Well, if you got the mortar, it's my mortar now, because he's assigned it to me. I want some HE rounds." He says, "Well, you have to talk to the battalion or the commander." Well, I'm having breakfast the next morning with the colonel, because I had a night shift, something the first officer in the morning. So we're having breakfast together. And so I made my request for these HE rounds directly to the colonel. I was told in no uncertain terms I would not be allowed these HE rounds, because these little warriors weren't going to be running around doing whatever they damn well please. And so I learned my lesson.
Maybe you might want to move to the center and speak up if you're...
Yo, people, can you hear me?
There's a little bit of stuff on the other side of the wall.
Scott and I were talking a while ago, and he reminded me of something. I spent quite a bit of time on top of the Rock relay station. And him, Les Haga, and there were several others I talked to constantly on the radio. And most of them I didn't even know who they were when I was talking to them. And I was taking a break one night, sort of break. And you okay, Reed? I can't hear you. Oh, okay. Go from the diaphragm, right? But when I got off the radio, I told him I'm going to go off and push for a little bit. So I went and did my business, came back, and TOC's calling and said, "Hey, whenever you change frequencies, you got to let us know where it goes and contact you." Well, when Mother Nature calls, I must answer. He had a better term for it when I was taking the Sierra.
This is my first time here, and I enjoy it, and I thank all of y'all for helping me get through all these years and just being here. But you know, when we was over there, us gun bunnies, gun rats, whatever what you want to call us, and humping the shells and eating the dirt and all of that, but we had to have some fun sometimes, and we did some things maybe that some of y'all don't know about, some of you might remember, but the first sergeant kind of got under our skin one time. I'm not going to tell you which one it was. Well, it's the one between here and here. And anyway, so you know, when we had the latrine out there, you had to pull them little half barrels out and set them on fire, and you know, I'll be nice, saying the nice way. But anyway, so we saw him coming one day, so you know, we'd had to put some new barrels in there and had the old ones out. We done dumped them, put the diesel in them and everything. So we got, you know, we'll get him, and we pulled one out and we just held one there. We waited till he sat down and we lit it and we slept. All we heard was, "Yep!" And he come out the front door and he didn't get his pants up and he fell down. To this day, he don't know who did it. So that's kind of the way, you know, it was real serious. When we got down to business of fighting and doing what we had to, we did it. But we did have some fun here and there, you know, and we'd shoot at some rats with people in the bunkers before we thought about it, things like that. But thank y'all for everything you did, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
So Luck and I are up, and we're changing the tube either at Convoy or Fuquien. I think it was Convoy. And the VTR that was on one end sets the back of the barrel with the breech down on some barrels, and he's going to wrap the cord around and screw the breech on. And he drops it, and he bends the boom of the record. So an artillery outfit without a record is in pretty bad shape. So we decided that we had to make a heist. So we didn't steal a boom, we stole a record. And, yeah, you know. And I'm not exactly clear anymore exactly how the hoist went. But that was probably our biggest one. Some of our other ones is that we went down to Tonsanute and we stole connexes full of stuff. And I wasn't really sure what we were going to do with all of that stuff. We brought it back and had like thousands of dial indicators in it and turbochargers and stuff like that. And I thought, what are we stealing all of this for? And then we would steal a Jeep, and the air police stole the Jeep from us. You know, and finally it got so bad that the commanding officer says, okay, we're going to have an IG inspection. We have got to get rid of all this shit. So he says, what we're going to do is we're going to bring the 5 tons in, we're going to load them up with all of this stuff, connexes, tires, refrigeration units, generators, and everything else. And we gave them trip tickets, and the guys drove around this day, the next day, constantly driving around just to keep all of the stuff hidden. And the record too. And then he was angry because we stole the gas instead of the diesel. But anyway, theft was part of it, and it was great.
I got in.
And I was really glad when Denny came because Denny stole in quantity.
Guys are over there. I know when you came home, you're not treated well. I want to apologize for everyone that has treated you badly. I want to thank you for serving the country. I want to thank you for being there for each other, backing each other up. The friendships, the comrades. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart.
Here, I've got the stories about Joe was an amazing guy. He was, what was he, about 27 when he was there?
He was older guy.
Yeah. He had been in the Jesuit seminary for a number of years. He had 2 master's degrees in classical antiquities. The Jesuit seminary found out that he was married and had a daughter, and they asked him to please leave. He ended up with us not long thereafter. But the guy was a genius, but he marched to the beat of his own drummer. He would do things that were not by the Army book, but would work. One day he decides, these batteries are bad on the radio. I'm going to rewire the radio system. He completely rewires the radio system. There's no code for the wiring. He goes, yeah, Lieutenant, I got this done. So, yeah, that's nice, but how do we know how the wires are set up? He looks at me and says, University of Alabama. I go, what do you mean, University of Alabama? He goes, positively right. And to this day, I know his wiring system.
He was Major Zimmerman's driver, and he also went with me and Norm on R&R. Anyway, we believe he died 3 or 4 years ago. Anyway, one evening on the radios, when you talk to somebody, you always give your initials. At the end of the conversation, I go, Juliet talks about Delta. And Ross was down there, and somebody from A Battery, a lieutenant from A Battery, called over and wanted some information. And Ross gave it to him. He said, well, what's your initials? And he said, Zulu, Zulu, Zulu. So the landline came on right away. He said, what kind of initials are Zulu, Zulu, Zulu? He said, Zeke Zam Zamaruski. And 10 minutes later, the lieutenant was over there in Bradfield and split.
You all kinds of stuff. And one of the things that issue you would be a mosquito net. And the very first night I was there, this guy says, make sure you get this mosquito net up tonight. And I said, why? Are the mosquitoes that bad or really bad? He says, it's not for mosquitoes, it's to keep the rats off there. You probably all know about that in the bunkers. The only reason I bring it up is I got bit by a rat. Had to get the old needle about that long in the belly button. Shot 7 of them.
I'm 42 years and I am a Army. 42. And I am a Vietnam
now, and about what I was going to say. And once in my life, how awesome it works. But comrades, I'd like for you to stand up right now, and all of you, and let's give appreciation to our ladies, the ones that have followed us through this experience, that have lived Vietnam ever since we've known, and let's just show them a little bit of appreciation, if you don't mind. So, gentlemen, comrades, let's stand up and give appreciation.
Back then, I was probably not exactly America's favorite soldier. Would you agree, Hutch? Officers and me sort of didn't see eye to eye, I guess, with the left-hand salute and everything. It just went the wrong way. But I'll tell you a little story. Because of this award, I thought I'd for you all, because that's why I got it. It's not for me, it's for everybody here. But they let us go to Trump's house. They had a big party and everything. And the band was, my wife left me. Four Seasons, Frankie Valli and Four Seasons, and Joe Namath was there. It was quite an event. And I took my kids. I got a son that's like 30 and my daughter is 18. And I took my son's wife and we had the best time. But the funniest thing was, and this is in Palm Beach at Trump's house, a lot of people. And my daughter-in-law, they kept looking over at these two ladies that were at the next table. And this was a huge place. And I said, what the hell are you guys looking at? They said, every time these two ladies stand up, when they'd sit down, they'd go like this with their short dresses to sit down, and they didn't have any underwear on. You didn't notice? No! And my daughter said, we're so sick and tired of getting mooned every time somebody sits down. So I thought of y'all, I thought, God, you all would love to have been there. I mean, that made it all worth it. All those nights that made it worthwhile.
Save the Stars and Stripes. You were always provided for.
We had actually a nicer facility there. It was like a three-holer, and it was out at the edge of the fire base. And I'll never forget, he was out there one time, and someone encouraged one of the mama sons to go out and sit next to him. Just